My son let my wife feed me from the floor. But then my daughter came back. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And in the comments, what city are you from? Malin Jennings had always been a quiet woman, not shy, not timid, just soft in a world that often rewarded the loud. At 72, her softness had hardened into habit. She moved through spaces carefully, spoke only when necessary, and made herself small without even realizing it. She had never intended to move in with her son and his family. The arrangement had come after a small stroke and a fall in the kitchen of her old apartment. The doctors said she couldn't live alone anymore. Her son, Danny, had insisted, "Of course you'll come live with us, Ma." His wife Jamie smiled politely, nodding in agreement, already calculating where Malin would go. That was a year ago. Now she lived in what used to be a storage closet at the back of the house. It had a narrow bed, a makeshift dresser made of plastic drawers, and one small window, mostly blocked by the hot water heater. The room was clean, tidy, and utterly devoid of warmth. No one came in unless they needed something, and Malin never left it without purpose. She awoke before everyone else, every morning. Always had. Even now, she liked to be up when the house was still silent, when the light outside was barely more than a suggestion. She found comfort in the solitude, in the way the world hadn't quite yet begun to expect things of her. She would rise, her joints protesting quietly, and wrap her shawl around her shoulders before slipping out into the kitchen. Jamie's kitchen was modern, sleek, full of machines Malin didn't know how to use. The countertops gleamed. Everything had a place. It was not a space meant for older hands or slow movements. Still, Malin had made her peace with it. She used the electric kettle Jamie had once called granny-proof, and she still drank from the chipped floral mug she had insisted on keeping. She didn't sit at the kitchen table. There was always something on it: mail, projects, a centerpiece of faux eucalyptus Jamie changed with the seasons. Malin would stand quietly in the corner, holding her tea, letting it warm her fingers as she looked out the small side window that faced the neighbor's fence. No one else woke until at least an hour later. Then the rhythm of the house changed. Footsteps, water running, cabinet doors opening and closing with mechanical precision. Jamie was always the first down, hair in place, dressed like she was about to give a presentation. She barely acknowledged Malin. "Good morning," Malin would say. "Morning," Jamie would respond, never looking up. Danny would come in next, distracted and half-dressed, fumbling for coffee. He'd give his mother a half-smile, the kind that looked like it had somewhere better to be. The children, Tyler, 15, and Madeline, 13, would thunder down last, already glued to their phones, already half arguing. Malin moved around them like a ghost. She handed Jamie a napkin when she dropped one. She picked up a sock left on the floor. She let herself be useful. It was easier than trying to belong, but Sundays were different. Sundays were family lunch. Jamie took pride in those. She called them intentional gatherings. She would cook something elaborate, set the table with cloth napkins and candles, and insist everyone be present, phones off. It was the only time of the week the entire family was expected to be together. The first time it happened, it caught Malin off guard. She had gone to the dining room expecting to take her usual seat, at the end of the table by the window, but her chair wasn't there. She stood, uncertain, as the others bustled around her. Jamie entered carrying a tray. "Oh, Mom," she said brightly, "I set you up in the living room. It'll be more comfortable for you." Malin blinked. "The living room?" Jamie nodded, brushing past her. "Yes, you said your knees bother you, right? It's lower, easier for you. I put a nice tray out for you with everything on it, right next to the couch." Malin turned. Sure enough, there it was, a TV tray on the floor, a cushion placed beside it like a mat. Her plate was already there, along with a napkin and a glass of water. No chair. "I can sit at the table," she said quietly. "Oh no, don't worry about it," Jamie said. "Everyone's already arranged. It'll just be for today." But it wasn't. The next Sunday, and the one after that, Malin's place was the tray on the floor. The rest of the family sat around the dining table, laughing, passing dishes, clinking glasses. Jamie had even added a small throw blanket beside Malin's tray. "To make it cozy," she said. Malin lowered herself carefully each time, bones creaking, legs folding with effort. She didn't complain. Complaining meant confrontation, and confrontation, she had learned, always made things worse. The children stopped speaking to her unless prompted. Tyler called her Granny Gollum once when he thought she couldn't hear. Madeline giggled. Jamie didn't correct them. Danny said nothing at all. It wasn't just the seating. It was the way her things were slowly moved. The way her books disappeared from the shelf, replaced with decorative objects. The way her favorite mug sometimes went missing, replaced with a plain one. The way no one asked her about her day, her health, her thoughts. She had become a fixture, something to work around, something polite people didn't discuss directly. One evening, Jamie prepared a roast chicken with rosemary potatoes and green beans. The smell filled the house. Malin entered the dining room just as everyone was sitting down. Her place was, as usual, missing. She turned toward the living room where the tray waited. As she lowered herself, Tyler tossed a roll onto her plate from across the room. "Fetch, Granny," he called. Laughter erupted. Madeline nearly choked on her drink. Jamie smiled, amused. Danny looked at his phone. Malin stared at the roll, then slowly picked it up and placed it to the side. She said nothing. After dinner, she returned to her room. The chipped mug was there on her nightstand. She held it tightly, staring at the cold tea inside. She thought of her mother's kitchen, her own childhood table, the meals she had made with love for Danny when he was small, the way he used to hold her hand in public, unashamed. Now he could barely meet her eyes. She lay down, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin. The room was silent, but for the hum of the water heater. She closed her eyes, whispering a truth she didn't want to admit. They had not simply moved her out of the way, they had moved her out of the family. Malin began to disappear. Not in the dramatic way people vanish in stories. There was no slamming of doors, no suitcase by the curb. Her erasure came slowly, like dust gathering on a forgotten photograph. At first, it was subtle. She'd go to the pantry and find her favorite brand of tea replaced with something green and bitter. "We're switching to healthier options," Jamie would say with a smile too sharp. "Cinnamon has too much sugar." The change didn't stop there. The floral mug, the one with the faded roses and tiny crack along the handle, vanished from the cabinet. Malin searched for it quietly, opening each cupboard twice, afraid to ask. She found it days later in a bin in the garage, coated with dust and cobwebs beside a broken lamp and a box labeled "Yard Sale." She retrieved it without a word. The bookshelf in the hallway, once home to a few of her mystery novels and cookbooks, was slowly overtaken by Jamie's things. Minimalist vases, framed quotes and sleek black lettering, decorative bowls with nothing inside. When Malin asked where her books had gone, Jamie replied airily, "Oh, I boxed them up. We're simplifying. It was getting cluttered." The house, once filled with small signs of her presence, no longer bore her signature. Even her scent, lavender hand cream and warm tea, had been scrubbed out, replaced by chemical citrus and linen sprays. Still, Malin said nothing. Jamie began to reorganize the kitchen drawers. One afternoon, Malin reached for her old paring knife, the one with the worn wooden handle, and found it missing. When she asked, Jamie replied, "It was rusty, unsafe. I threw it out. But I've used that knife for—" "It's just a knife, Malin. Let it go." She let it go. One by one, her belongings disappeared. Her calendar, her framed photo of Alice at graduation, the blanket her mother had knitted. "Old things," Jamie said with a shrug, tossing them into donation bins. Malin's world shrank to 4 walls and a chair in the corner of the living room where she ate in silence. The children followed their mother's lead. Tyler stopped acknowledging her altogether. He'd roll his eyes when she entered the room, or whisper to Madeline, who giggled behind her phone. Once, as Malin passed by, she caught a phrase mid-whisper. "She smells like old books and dust." The remark stung more than she admitted. She spent that night rubbing lotion into her skin, brushing her hair until it shone, polishing her shoes as if she could somehow erase age the way they had erased her. Still, it wasn't the worst. The worst came one Wednesday evening. She had spent the day in her room, too tired to move, the ache in her knees worse than usual. At dinner time, she emerged to find her tray already prepared in the living room. She walked slowly to it, careful with her steps. But as she reached to set down her glass of water, her hand trembled. The glass tipped, spilling onto the carpet. She gasped and bent to blot it with her napkin. Jamie was in the doorway instantly. "Seriously?" "I'm sorry," Malin said quickly. Jamie sighed loudly. "That carpet is less than a year old. I'll clean it. You should have said something if you couldn't handle the tray. Do we need to put you in a home?" The words hit harder than a slap. From the dining room, Tyler snorted. "Just give her a dog bowl already." Madeline laughed. Jamie didn't scold them. Danny, seated at the head of the table, cleared his throat but said nothing. He looked at his plate. Malin knelt on the carpet, sopping up water with her cloth napkin, her back curved like a question mark. That night, she didn't eat. She returned to her room and sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at her reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back was a stranger, smaller, duller, thinner somehow. She pulled open the drawer of her nightstand and removed a small notebook. Inside were pages of her handwriting, recipes scribbled in margins, grocery lists, birth dates of the grandchildren, and small, loving notes from another time. She flipped to a blank page and picked up her pen with a shaky hand. "Dear Malin," she wrote, "you are not invisible. You are not a burden. You are not broken." She paused, then added, "But you are tired, and you are fading, and no one seems to see it but you." She closed the notebook and held it to her chest like a secret. The next morning, her shampoo was gone from the shower. She stood under the water, cold and exposed, and realized she hadn't heard anyone speak her name in 3 days. She began to think she might vanish completely. One afternoon, she found herself standing at the edge of the family room, watching as the others prepared for movie night. Popcorn, blankets, soda cans cracking open. She wasn't invited. She hadn't been for months. She turned to leave when Madeline called out, "Hey, Nana, you want to sit with us?" Malin turned, surprised. The invitation warmed her briefly. Then Tyler chimed in, grinning. "Yeah, you can curl up on your floor mat like always." Laughter. Even Jamie chuckled. Malin smiled faintly, nodded, and shuffled back to her room. She lay on her bed that night and imagined herself in her old apartment. Small, yes, but filled with sunlight. Plants on the windowsill, books on every shelf, a kitchen that still smelled like cinnamon. She pressed her hand against her chest, searching for something steady. A heartbeat. A reminder. She whispered to the ceiling, "I used to be someone." And the silence whispered nothing in return. Malin didn't expect the doorbell to ring that Tuesday morning. Visitors were rare in the Jennings house, and the ones who came were usually Jamie's friends or delivery men Jamie didn't tip. Malin was sitting in her room, folding the same sweater she had folded yesterday. Gray, woolen, too heavy for spring, but familiar. Her fingers moved slowly as if through fog. The chime rang again, louder this time, followed by silence. No one else seemed to notice it. She rose, knees protesting, and shuffled barefoot to the front door. The handle was cold in her hand. When she opened it, the sunlight hit her eyes. Bright, too bright, and then she saw her. Alice. Her daughter. Tall and angular like her father, but with Malin's sharp gaze. Her hair was pulled back in a neat clip. She wore a gray coat and carried a slim black suitcase. Her lips were pressed in a line, unreadable. "Hi, Mom," Alice said softly. Malin didn't speak at first. She reached out slowly, as if unsure whether the figure before her was real. "Alice," she whispered, and stepped back to let her in. The door closed behind them with a soft click. The hallway felt too narrow for both of them, as if the house sensed an outsider and recoiled. Inside, the house was still. Too still. Jamie was at work, the children at school. Danny had left early for a meeting. For once, Malin didn't feel invisible. She felt exposed. They sat in the living room where the faint scent of citrus cleaner lingered. Alice looked around slowly, taking in the decor, the pristine surfaces, the sterile elegance. She frowned at the tray table by the couch, its legs slightly bent, the cushion beside it flattened by use. "What's that?" she asked. Malin glanced over. "Oh, that's where I usually eat." "You what?" "It's fine," Malin said quickly. "It's easier on my knees." Alice's eyes narrowed. "Since when do you eat on the floor?" Malin tried to smile. "It's cozy." "You're not a cat, Mom. This is their home, but that doesn't mean you live like a—" She stopped herself, took a breath. Never mind. Malin's hands curled around the edge of her shawl. She had hoped Alice's visit would be brief, a polite stop, a gentle interruption. Not this, not questions. But Alice noticed everything. She always had. That evening, the family returned. Jamie entered first, heels clicking, voice sharp on the phone. She paused when she saw Alice in the kitchen. "Oh," she said, managing a smile. "Hi there." Alice nodded. "Hello, Jamie." Danny followed, blinking in surprise. "Didn't expect you." "I needed a break from work. Thought I'd spend some time with Mom." Danny rubbed the back of his neck. "You could have called. I wanted to see things as they are." His eyes flickered. He said nothing. Tyler and Madeline trudged in, barely glancing at her. "Aunt Alice," they mumbled, then disappeared upstairs. Dinner was quiet. Jamie served chicken with asparagus and couscous. The table was set with pale napkins and heavy silverware. Malin hovered nearby, waiting. Jamie turned to her. "Your tray's all set, Malin." She gestured toward the living room. Alice's fork paused midair. "She's eating in there?" she asked. Jamie smiled too widely. "She prefers it. It's easier for her." Alice looked at her mother. "Is that true?" Malin hesitated. "It's fine," Jamie added. "It's her choice." "Interesting," Alice said coldly. "Funny how her choice always looks like everyone else's convenience." No one answered. Malin took her tray and sat on the floor as usual. The voices from the dining room faded into a murmur, punctuated by laughter that didn't include her. After dinner, Alice joined her mother in the small bedroom. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her mother fold the same sweater once again. "Mom," she said, "what's really going on here?" Malin didn't look up. "Nothing. Don't lie to me. I'm not. You're eating on the floor like a stray dog. You have no place at the table. Your things are gone. Your voice is gone." Malin sat still, her hands motionless in the soft gray wool. "I'm just trying not to make trouble." Alice stepped inside. That's what they count on. Malin looked up slowly. Her eyes were tired but clear. "You don't understand. I'm here by their kindness." "No, Mom. You're here because they should be grateful to have you. You don't owe them silence. They're my family. And what does that mean to them?" Malin didn't answer. The next morning, Alice made tea. She didn't ask. She set 2 mugs on the kitchen table and sat down across from her mother. "I'm staying for a few days," she said. "I want to observe." Malin didn't protest. She just nodded and sipped her tea. What followed was a quiet, ruthless audit. Alice watched how Jamie addressed her mother, as if speaking to a failing appliance. She noted how Danny never looked up from his phone, how the children rolled their eyes or ignored Malin entirely. She noticed that Malin was never invited to join them in the den, that her meals were always isolated, that her name was spoken only when something needed to be cleaned or retrieved. 3 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, Alice stood in the center of the living room and called everyone in. Jamie arrived first, confused. "What's going on?" "Family meeting," Alice said. Danny came in next, rubbing his temples. "Can this wait?" "No." Tyler and Madeline slouched in behind them, bored and indifferent. Alice turned to Jamie. "You've been mistreating my mother. You feed her on the floor. You erase her presence. You teach your children to mock her." Jamie laughed uncomfortably. "That's a stretch." Alice didn't blink. "She eats alone. She sleeps in a converted closet. Her things are in the garage. She's humiliated daily, and you smile through it. She never complained." "She's not the type to." Jamie scoffed. "She likes it that way. She's old-fashioned." "She's not furniture." Danny stepped in. Okay, let's all calm down." "No, Danny," Alice snapped. "You let this happen. You watched it." "She never said anything." "She didn't have to." Jamie crossed her arms. "This isn't your house." Alice smiled, slow and sharp. "You're right. It's not. It's hers." A beat of silence. Jamie blinked. "What?" Alice looked at her mother. "Tell them, Mom." Malin hesitated, then said softly, "The deed is still in my name. It always was." Danny stared at her. "You never added me? You never asked." Jamie paled. "That's ridiculous." Alice took a folded paper from her purse. "I pulled the record yesterday. County office, public document. Would you like a copy?" No one spoke. "You've been treating my mother like she's expendable," Alice said, "but this house is hers, and you are guests who have worn out your welcome." Jamie stepped forward, furious. "You can't do this." "I can," Malin said. Her voice was soft, but it was hers. Danny looked at her, eyes filled with something like shame. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Alice said, "You have 2 hours to pack." Tyler protested. "But this is our home." "Your home is where you show respect," Alice replied. "Not here, not anymore." They left that evening, silent and stunned. No slammed doors, no yelling, just the sound of bags zipping and footsteps down the walkway. When the door clicked shut behind them, Malin sat in the armchair in the living room, not the floor. The silence that followed was not hollow, but whole. The silence that settled over the house after they left was unlike any Malin had known in the past year. It was not the heavy quiet of being ignored or erased. It was a clean silence, like the first breeze after a long storm, the kind that moves gently through open windows, touching everything with a sense of beginning. She woke before the sun, as always. Her body still remembered the habits of invisible living, rising early to avoid being seen, moving quietly through rooms that weren't hers, shrinking in doorways. But now the house felt larger, not physically, spiritually. It had room for her again. She slipped into her slippers and padded into the kitchen. It was the first time in months that she didn't glance at the tray on the living room floor. It was gone now, folded and leaning against the wall. Jamie hadn't taken it. No one had. It just wasn't needed anymore. She reached into the cabinet and found, to her quiet joy, the chipped floral mug. Alice had washed it the night before and placed it on the front row of cups, like a returned crown. Malin filled it with cinnamon tea. The familiar scent rose into her face, and for a moment her eyes stung. She carried the mug not to the corner, not to the edge of the room, but to the kitchen table. She sat down. No one said she couldn't. No one watched her with narrowed eyes. She just sat. The light filtered through the blinds, drawing stripes across the table. She traced one with her finger. Alice appeared a few minutes later, barefoot, her hair loose around her shoulders. She poured her own tea and joined her mother at the table. They sat in companionable silence, two women who had once been distant and were now rediscovering how to be close. That day was quiet, peaceful. No alarms, no slamming doors. Alice spent the afternoon in the backyard, tending to the overgrown hydrangeas Jamie had let die. Malin opened the windows and dusted the photo frames she'd recovered from a garage box labeled Donate. One by one, she placed them back on the walls. Her wedding photo, Alice in her cap and gown, Danny as a boy, laughing with a missing tooth. She didn't hide his image. She wasn't angry, not anymore. She just wanted the truth of her life to be seen again. That evening, Alice made stir-fry. Malin chopped vegetables at the counter while music played softly from the radio. They moved in rhythm, no words needed. When the food was ready, they both sat at the dining table. Yes, that same table where she had once been excluded. 2 plates, 2 cloth napkins, and candles because Alice insisted. They ate slowly, savoring the food and the space. No one interrupted. No one sighed in impatience. It felt sacred. Later, as they washed dishes, the phone rang. Alice reached for it. "It's Danny." Malin froze, then nodded. Alice answered and passed it over. There was a long pause. "Hi, Ma." His voice was uncertain, raw. "Hello, Danny. He exhaled. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." She said nothing. "I don't know how I let it happen. I think I knew. I just didn't want to deal with it. Jamie, she's persuasive, but that's no excuse." "No," Malin said, "it's not." He hesitated. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I miss you." She softened. "I miss you too. And the kids, they've been asking questions. I told them they owe you an apology. I owe you more than that. You owe me respect," she said. "That's all I've ever wanted." There was silence on the other end. "I understand," he said finally. "We'll talk again soon," she added. "Okay, I'd like that." She ended the call and set the phone down gently. Alice entered the room again. "How did it go?" Malin smiled. "He's learning." 2 days later, Alice's daughter Harper arrived. A small, serious girl with a backpack full of books and wide eyes that missed nothing. "Grandma," she said, and ran to hug her. It took Malin a second to react. She hadn't heard that word in so long, but she wrapped her arms around the girl and held on. Harper looked around the house with quiet curiosity. "Can we bake something?" she asked. They made apple pie. Malin showed her how to roll the dough, how to slice the apples thin, how to tuck the edges just right. "You're really good at this," Harper said. "I've had practice," Malin replied. When the pie cooled, Harper set the table. She laid out 3 plates, 3 forks, and poured glasses of milk with the solemnity of a priestess. She sat down, then looked at Malin. "You'll sit here with us, right?" Malin nodded. "Good," Harper said, "because this table is for family." They ate together. Harper asked about old stories. Alice shared some embarrassing ones. Malin laughed more than she had in years. Her shoulders, once drawn tightly around her frame, now sat low and at ease. Later that night, Malin sat by the window in her room, the one that barely showed the street, but now it seemed to open onto the whole world. She held the mug in her hands and whispered, "I'm still here." And this time she didn't need an answer. The next morning, she made tea. She sat at the table. She opened the window wide and let the light pour in. For the first time in a long, long time, Malin Jennings took her rightful place, not on the floor, at the table. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe for more. Watch the next one, and explore the others on the channel. And if someone you know needs to hear this, share it with them.